Good evening. Welcome to this special edition of Earthwise. My name is Zena Bondati, and we are live at the Aga Khan University in Nairobi. Now, this is a special edition because it's Sunday, of course, the day Earthwise broadcasts. But why this edition is special is because, one, it's live, and two, we have a studio audience, live studio audience. And you can also join this conversation online at Zain Wandati on all social media platforms, NTV Earthwise, all social media platforms, or also NTV Kenya. Now, this conversation is happening just a few days before the COP30 kicks off in Belém in Brazil. And the question that we're asking tonight is, where is the money, and why is this money not getting to the communities that need it the most, particularly communities in Africa and the global south that suffer some of the worst impacts of climate change, yet contributed the least to this problem that is climate change? At COP29, the continent demanded $1.8 trillion. The continent will still be demanding $1.8 trillion this time around, but the global north refuses to pay. Or maybe just won't pay. Whether they're refusing or just won't pay or they don't have the money, those are some of the questions we'll be asking here tonight with our live studio audience. And I'd like to jump quick to introduce my panelists so that we can get right into it. And right next to me is Joseph Murabula, who is the CEO of the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. And the Kenya Climate Innovation Center will be having a conference on climate investments, so which is a sequel, if you might say that, to this conversation here beginning next week. And next to him is Nakami Walunywa, who's the Regional Director for Africa at Village Capital. And last but not least, Francis Romano, who is the CEO of Knights Energy. The National Treasury was supposed to join us here. The Climate Finance Unit was supposed to join us here, but unfortunately, they are unable to join us. But hopefully, the questions that are generated here, if they're directed towards them, we will be able to pose them to them, and then hopefully they can respond. So I'd just like to get right to it. But at the beginning of this conversation, there's a question I'd like us all to keep in mind as we begin this conversation. We have the solutions, we have the technologies, we have the expertise across Africa. Innovators are doing brilliant things in the climate space. Climate tech actually doing such brilliant things. But if we have all of this and the money exists, we know the money exists, we've seen the amount of money that pension funds are holding, we know the money exists somewhere in the world. What is stopping it from flowing to these people who need it? What is stopping it from flowing to Africa? That is the question I want us to start with today, and hopefully by the end of this conversation, we will have some answers to that as we prepare to go to COP30. So let's just get right into it. So I'd like to start with you, Joseph. 30 years of COP, 30 years of climate negotiations, 30 years of Africa knocking on doors but not getting a response. So I want us to cut through the noise. Cut through the noise. And given the work that you do, you work directly with these climate innovators, you've seen the things they do, so you know the financing gaps that they face. What is the problem? Is it that there's no money, or is the financial system broken somewhere that the money is not able to get to where it's needed?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think the issue is not one of a lack of money, because if we look at Africa alone, we know that if the aggregate demand, if you aggregate the NDCs, the national determined contributions that have been submitted by African countries, that figure is, the demand is about $277 billion. But in Africa, $277 billion, but in Africa we know that our pension assets alone are something like $700 billion. So our pension assets alone can actually finance the NDCs. The challenge is what you call market failure. And the reason this the market failure happens is, one, because of national priorities. We know that close to half of Africa and African countries are facing debt sustainability issues. This year alone, African countries are going to spend about $20 billion in interest alone. So the prioritizing debt service to to climate funding is one of those challenges. The other challenge is that the funding is available, but it's the wrong kind of funding, so to speak. If you look at the kind of enterprises we support ourselves, for instance, they are very early stage, needing patient capital, but we know that most of the money that's available is actually debt. It comes in form of debt, and therefore it's very difficult for those kind of enterprises to follow, and therefore they generally don't access that kind of money. And then the third, and especially linked to the COP, is that, you know, the global north is supposed to provide funding that flows to the global south, but it comes with conditionalities such that it's very difficult to access that money. By the time you meet that the conditions, it's time for the next COP, and so the money doesn't flow much as is pledged.
Okay, just a quick follow-up to what you said, market failure.
Yeah.
You've mentioned market failure.
Yeah.
So suppose you've got innovators here, the audience we have here is very young, and maybe one of them has a climate tech idea, and they'd like to know what exactly you mean by market failure. So what specifically is broken?
Yeah, market failure is basically just a situation where the funds are available, but they don't go to where they are most needed. That is basically the issue. And where they're most needed is in innovations. We know that the structure of our economy is such that 95% of all our businesses are SMEs, so to speak. And SMEs come from idea stage companies, so that's where our focus essentially should be. The 5% that is big corporations, they basically don't need that focus because they already have very settled financial models and funding streams, so they can sort themselves out. But the money doesn't flow to SMEs for many reasons. One is most of that money, as I mentioned, is debt money, which doesn't lend itself to financing SMEs. Most of that money is in the commercial banking system, and commercial banks generally try to avoid SMEs because of risk perception.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now, Nakami, I'd like you to jump in there and talk to us a little bit about, picking up from what he said, risk. Yeah. Africa is considered generally risky. People would rather trust that big name that they already know somewhere around the world than you, a startup in Africa who is just starting to make a name for yourself. Is it that they don't understand the context, or Silicon Valley style? We have to make our innovations to be Silicon Valley style in order to attract this funding.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I'm glad that Joseph actually said perception, because it is a perception. Africa is perceived as risky, but is that really the situation on the ground? Now, I think one of the things that we need to do is really define what climate tech means for Africa. To Silicon Valley, it could be carbon capture methods, and there's enough tech and assets to be able to build those solutions. But for us, it could be as simple as a waste management plan somewhere in Kisumu, collecting waste and then promoting the circularity space. So first, we need to define that for ourselves. And second, that risk that you talk about, perceived as it may be, there's ways for us to de-risk it. And for us at Village Capital, one of the ways we do that is through blended finance. So we will have the DFIs and foundations putting in the catalytic capital that is needed. And then they take the first loss and put in the guarantees, which then would attract commercial investors and impact investors to then take.
I think we've lost your sound, so maybe use Joseph's microphone for a moment as we figure out to fix yours.
Sorry about that. Where did you lose me?
Turns out your microphone was off. Yeah, you can continue now.
Okay, so as I was speaking, at Village Capital, what we believe in is using a blended approach to financing, and that means that We then allow the DFIs, the foundations that support us, to take the first loss and put in guarantees, which then would attract the commercial investors such as VCs to come in with a second check. And what we've also done really well, and I like that Joseph alluded to this, it's not that there's a lack of capital, it's just capital is not flowing. It's not flowing to the right entrepreneurs. And the other part of it is VCs are not deploying the right type of capital to meet the needs of the entrepreneur. One of the things my colleague likes to say is investors are delusional, and I really agree with her. So one thing we're doing at Village Capital is looking at the needs of each startup, same way you would look at their needs when you're doing capacity building or providing technical support. So that way, we also look at their needs based on what that business needs in terms of financing. So we're not going to give you a revenue-based share when you can take on debt. We're not going to force an equity instrument down your throat when you actually need a safe. So that is how we're sort of de-risking this, and then that then attracts the commercial investors to come in after us to provide follow-on capital.
How would you, there's also this perception that for African startups particularly who are looking for funding in whatever industry, climate or otherwise, you need a friendlier face. Like a white person as the front of this enterprise. Therefore, you get the money. You have stand a higher chance of getting the money as opposed to if you're just...
So let me demystify that for you, because, and not just as Village Capital, but I'm answering another question. One of the things we really look at is a problem-solution fit and the clarity of that. So regardless of how great your idea is, or whether you bring a white person to pitch, if there's no customer paying for your product or service, then you're not going to invest in you.
Okay.
And one of the things that founders don't look at, whether in climate tech or just building a business, if you don't look at your customer's ROI. Remember, when you're pitching to an investor, they want to know what their return on investment is. But we also ask you the question of, what is your customer's return on investment? If you tell me to buy soap from you, let's say it's Geisha, why should I come to you versus Carson's? What am I benefiting from this transaction? And if as a founder you cannot articulate that, for me, I'm not going to invest.
Okay.
Yeah, so that white person thing is, again, a perception.
Okay,
Yeah.
not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'd like to bring in Romano here and talk about the realities on the ground. You know, there are things that people would say in the boardrooms, but kwa ground, mambo inakuwa ni tofauti kabisa. So just take us a little bit of behind the scenes and walk us through that journey of trying to raise funding. Like yourself, for example, when you were starting out, what were the challenges you met? Did you have the right expertise? Did the system support you? Did the system work against you? Talk to us a little bit about that journey.
Thank you very much for that question. But I'll tell you first what we do, and then I'll come back to that question. So I come from a company called Knights Energy. And what do? We provide renewable energy services, but we also provide electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And then on the other hand, we have an e-mobility company called Drive Electric. And so we run a fleet of approximately 100 electric taxis on the market, all powered using a charging infrastructure that we provide. So from that perspective, you'd imagine a very interesting company to invest in, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have the funding we need? The answer is no. So why?
Why?
And that is really the question here. So the capital available in the market is not usually structured to lend to climate finance, unless, of course, if you provide collateral or hard cash, or you provide instruments that can power and support what you'd call the common financing infrastructure. Now, would you do that for a climate finance instrument? Usually not. So those are the gaps that you find. So is climate finance available? Usually not. In an easy manner for SMEs, it's quite difficult to get to that. But there are other instruments. There are other supportive mechanisms. And I would want to thank Climate Innovation Center, for example, for linking startups to financiers, let's say, trying to provide accelerative support to such kind of SMEs. But directly from an SME to a financier, there is quite a lot of different things that need to be done. And in most cases, some of the challenges you mentioned, do you need a friendly person to tell you a story, for example, or to represent you in a conversation? I have gone through that. Somebody once told me that, yes, you have a very good product, but you are not saying it like the way somebody else should be saying it. What does that mean? So there's quite a number of things that need to be put together on the ground, and probably most SMEs on the ground may not understand how they need to package it. And there are some solutions, let's say, from partners like Climate Innovation who help SMEs to do that. But on the other hand, let's say, Village Capital might come in and support to structure and present SMEs to finance. But directly to get financing, there is still quite a lot of work that we need to do.
Are you looking for this financing internally or externally? What are your primary sources of finance when you're looking?
Both. Ideally, we should start by looking for financing internally.
Okay.
But a lot of that is very difficult, and then you have to look for it externally. And externally, you have to somehow package your story in a specific manner, and also be sure that you are speaking to the right funder, because again, different funders have different priorities, and for that reason, you have to be quite in the right place to be able to get the financing.
Okay.
Yes.
Be at the right place.
At the right time.
I'm sure Nakami would like to hear some of the challenges you experienced because you started by saying you don't get the funding that you need. So maybe as a financier herself, she would like to hear what were the pitfalls, and maybe she can advise at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to hear.
You want to hear that now?
Sure. If Zainab wants you to talk about it, why not?
Yeah, so the first quick one is collateral. So we are trying to scale a fleet of 100 units to 300 units. And most of the commercial banks would want to ask for collateral. So what kind of collateral do I have to keep to provide to increase a fleet to 300, let's say? The market is out there. The product we've put in the market is quite acceptable. The customers like it. The technology is mature. We are scaling up an infrastructure that is very easy to commercialize. But a financier is wondering, what is this charging infrastructure? How do I de-risk it, for example, those kind of things? Those kind of instruments. And do we have, let's say, mitigation, not really mitigation, but do we have blended finance instruments that can provide guarantees, for example, to be able to support, let's say, an investor who is risk averse, let's say? Those are missing. So while a lot of the solutions we provide particularly are bankable, the investors are asking us to provide de-risking mechanisms that we don't have ourselves.
Okay. So how would you suggest he goes about that?
Before Joseph goes, I just want to say I understand where you're coming from with saying like those mechanisms are not in place. And maybe I am privileged because I sit on the investment side as well. So I tend to see that they are actually available. And I think the biggest problem is a lack of awareness of what is available in the market for your solution. I do understand that a lot of banks and commercial lenders will want to ask collateral from you, but we at Village Capital are, for example, running a program with NORAD that is supporting people in the same space as you. And what we're doing through that program is offering grants. But on top of that, we are also working with other investors in the same space to then provide follow-on capital. So that type of capital that then has one investor taking in the first loss is available. It's just that there's a lack of awareness of what is there. And maybe, Romano, you can side chat me.
For sure.
Okay.
I basically just wanted to add to what my two colleagues have said. That problem where innovators are basically talking about lack of finance, and then the funders are talking about we have money and we don't have projects. It's something we hear a lot about. But usually you have to bring them together to, so that then you sort of break down the language barriers and break down the awareness barriers. So at the Africa Climate Investment Summit from Tuesday, we have deal rooms where investors for specific sectors will be. and the innovators for specific sectors will request you to go into those deal rooms so that then you can have a conversation in what I would call a risk-free environment. It's not their premises and it's not your premises, so both of you are on neutral ground. You will have time to ask for clarification if you don't understand anything, so that then by the time you leave, you have a common understanding of what is needed, and hopefully that conversation can then lead to funding, because that is a problem here about quite a bit. And it's part of the reason we're actually doing this summit, and this year we've ensured that it is there's less talk and more action, so that then people can have a lot more meaningful conversations that lead to actual funding flow, rather than listening to the rest of us speaking. Thank you.
Okay, Joseph, while you still have the microphone, I'd like to talk a little bit about the criticism that the African ecosystem it has very many pilots.
Yes.
Many small projects, not enough aggregation, not enough scale.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to yourself as an incubator for these innovations, how do you help people get to that point of aggregation, so that by the time they're going to seek this investment or seek this funding, they are able to sustain that business?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So now, there's in ecosystem building, there's something you must focus on, and that's common purpose. You have to bring together people with a common purpose, and in this case, I guess, is the purpose to fight climate change through innovation, as it is. When we were doing our new strategy, KCSE 4.0, which we launched in June this year, we figured that problem of having very many players who are not speaking to each other, who don't know of each other sometimes, who don't seem to have a common purpose, and who don't really have a social kind of relationship, so to speak, was a problem. And so we figured that one way of supporting is to come up with a framework where we now not just support individual enterprises solely, but we support whole ecosystems as it is. Because it's only by having an ecosystem that works together with a common purpose that then it can confront common problems, and that's where innovation then happens. And it's only that when innovation then happens, that then you begin to build a social capital, and then problems become easy to solve. If I had a situation where everybody knows the sort of enterprises we support at KCIC, for instance, and so when you see anything where they can benefit, you can send me a text or just call and say, this is happening, please look out for it. It becomes very easier. It becomes a lot easier to solve problems and move forward as a country and as a continent.
Okay. Nakami, I just want to zoom out for a moment and look at Africa from a global lens. So I'd like you to tell me what you think Africa's competitive advantage is when it comes to climate tech, such that if you are sitting in a global investment committee meeting and someone asks you, Nakami, why should I bring this money to Africa as opposed to Europe or this other region? What do you say?
I think our climate story in Africa is still untold, yeah? And to answer that question very briefly, people here are building innovations in the middle of all these constraints that we're talking about, like the market barriers, the lack of access to capital, the lack of the proper networks. But people are still building. Like every day I wake up, there's a pitch deck in my inbox. And it's an amazing solution that is solving for Africa, by Africa, but not just for Africa alone, something that will actually scale globally. So that story remains untold. There's huge, immense potential. If I can't use that to convince any investor, then I'm speaking to the wrong type of
regardless
investor.
Of the many pilots,
regardless of the many pilots. The reason why the pilots are not moving forward, you have to understand that climate tech is an asset-heavy business. Like, you're required to do a lot of R&D at the beginning, which most founders will not have. And no investor, commercial investor at least, is putting money in them to be able to accomplish that first stage of R&D. So then they get to the MVP, and then they start actually making money, and then now they would attract a VC. So that is the challenge. So regardless of the many pilots, somebody has to put in that catalytic capital to then push these innovations forward to move even beyond Africa. Yeah.
Okay, so follow-up question, mitigation, adaptation. Two words you hear a lot. But the criticism that Africa often gets is that we put money in mitigation as opposed to adaptation, which is where we need it the most. Yeah. So yourself as a financier, where do you think your priorities are?
So I would say, as Village Capital, it's not mitigation versus adaptation. We are looking for solutions that are scalable. And I'll go back to my earlier point, clarity of your problem, solution, fit. Number two, the team that you have put together, right? So whether you have the greatest idea or innovation, you also have to find the right people to be able to propel you to move that idea forward. And then number three, which I think a lot of climate tech enterprises don't focus on but should focus on, is both the financial readiness but impact readiness as well. And at Village Capital, we've built this really great tool called Abaca, free for entrepreneurs, by the way, ABACA. If you Google that, it will come to you. And it basically builds your journey of investment readiness from a milestone-based approach across 8 business segments, which is usually your team, your problem statement, your vision and mission, your priorities to scale, and then your investor exit. And at each point, you're able to set milestones for yourself. And every time you set a milestone, it will rate you based on your venture investment readiness awareness level. And at each level, it tells you what sort of capital you need to be looking for, if at all. And within that app, we've also built Capital Explorer, which then gives you all the available investments that you can look at within just tools. So Joseph, I think you don't even need to have investors in deals room, just use the tool.
Okay, so Francis, renewable energy, Africa has an immense renewable energy potential, and a lot of the climate solutions we are seeing young people coming up with, or a lot of the climate tech I'm seeing also winning competitions are climate tech around solar mini grids, as opposed to anything else. Why are we putting so much emphasis on solar and not anything else within the climate tech?
Well, I don't know that we are putting too much emphasis there, but if we look at it from a climate investments perspective, there are 3 to 5 areas we are looking at. The topmost of it is energy transition, followed by adaptation and resilience, followed by mitigation, and then there would be leave no one behind and other topics that are looking at that. But the key topics of investments would be energy transition. So even though the focus for investment would be adaptation and resilience, Africa has the most least resistant pathway in mitigation, especially when looking at the transport sector. Because on one hand, transport is where we invest a lot in terms of the energy we use in transport, and it's also in the transition of energy in transport is also the area that you can invest profitably from the beginning. So where are our priorities in terms of what we should do with climate finance? And if, for example, cost per kilometer in the transport sector, when it is electrified, would be a third of what it is right now, do I need climate finance to do that, or can I invest in it? So from that perspective, you simply need to design, let's say, a policy instrument that that creates it much easier to invest in transport, for example, and solar would be the most interesting way to do it.
Okay. Still on the same about the transport sector. The cost of doing this transition, the cost of the transition, if you take, for example, EV, electric mobility, the cost of that electric vehicle compared to a fossil fuel-powered vehicle does not give the average African the incentive to actually want to make that transition. And therefore, that means the numbers of people using this EV remains low, and maybe would put a strain on somebody looking to invest in this. How do we, given that you already work in the renewable energy space, are you working on solutions around this space?
It shouldn't be that way. For example, if you study where electromobility has succeeded, a lot of it has succeeded first and foremost because of policy instruments. In many, many markets, fiscal incentives have been the initial drivers for a transition to electric mobility before commercialization of e-mobility. Okay. We don't do that for whatever the reason. I was involved almost 10 years now, and for the four-wheeler segment where we work, the only thing we have there is 10% of excise duty. But that is the market where people are ready to invest, not in the two-wheelers or in the other space. It is the four-wheelers. Most people here must have come with four-wheelers. We probably use a lot of four-wheelers. So that area is ready for investment. So that's the first place. And if a policy instrument does that, then you gravitate people towards critical mass, and then at critical mass you can bring back other taxation mechanisms that would make the system just operate. On the other hand, renewable energy is abundant in our case. We have the sun shining every single day, and in my case, I always say there is sun there I can use for transport, but I'm just using it to create shadows. So it means that we really have to focus on the priorities, and what should be our priorities be. Invest in the energy that you have with you, use that energy for the transport system, even your transport will be cheaper, by all means. And then we can also make the vehicles here. Most of you would remember Nyayo Pioneer.
Yes.
That is a very old trip dream that did not go. So it doesn't mean that the technology to make EVs is not here. It is there. It's, to me, I think it's a question of priorities. What are they? Yes. Okay. We would not even be asking for climate finance. We will actually be able to do it ourselves if we just had the right policy instrument.
Okay,
yes.
Policy. Put a pin on that. We'll come back to you again on policy. Joseph, what do you think in the time that you've been working with these innovators and helping them through their ideas, what would you say is the greatest challenge or the biggest mistake you see them all making?
Yes, thanks for that question. The biggest issue innovators always have is normally the assumption that they know it all, and then all they need is finding support, and then they'll be able to succeed. So usually you have that challenge. What we ordinarily do is we take them through a prototyping phase to try, one, to basically tell them, make them appreciate that sometime you don't know it all. There are people who know better. And we have partnerships to be able to support that with universities, with industrial institutes, with research institutes, and that sort of thing, just to help them. Because they always make that mistake. And so you find they are calling you all the time, or they are appearing all the time saying, look, this is a great innovation, but you guys have refused to give me money. So there's always that challenge. We know that it is access to funding is a challenge, but the innovators need to be able to realize, or founders need to be able to realize, that their ideas need refinement before they lend themselves to
learn.
Yeah, exactly. So that then the first thing you put forward should not be to ask for money. It should be able to ask for assistance to enable you deploy your innovation, so to speak. And if you be able to, if you are ready for your hand to be held through mentorship, through product development, through a prototyping phase that then gets you to the proof of concept, where you can now have a product out of your idea, then the funding will certainly flow. And there are incubators like ourselves who, the moment we get to that level, we take you through an investor readiness program so that then you are able to speak the same language as Nagami here. and then be able to unlock value on the other side through funding or through technical assistance.
Okay, Nakami, I'll ask you the same question. From where you sit, what is the biggest mistake you see these innovators making?
I want to agree with Joseph that entrepreneurs think they know it all and then they don't. But also I want to bring in something else into play that is pushed in this investment ecosystem. And unfortunately is a question that you will always receive from any investor you're pitching to, which is the issue of scale. Now, if an investor asks you how you're going to scale this product or this service, the first thing as an entrepreneur you think about is the next market, right? So if you're building in Kenya, you'll start to tell us, oh, you know, we think we could expand to Rwanda or Uganda or whatever in X amount of time. But not understanding that in those markets you're talking about, there's specific nuances and frameworks and policy issues that we keep raving about here that may hinder the expansion of that thing into the other market. Now, I'd like to challenge entrepreneurs to actually think of scale as less than the next market I want to move on, but how can I take advantage of what's here right now? Because if you're building a solution in Kenya, chances are that you have identified a big enough market to be able to propel your business forward for a couple of years at least. And one of the biggest mistakes I see businesses make is scaling too fast because that idea of scale is misunderstood by entrepreneurs, at least from where I sit. And this is why I completely demystify that entire Mzungu thing, because if you look at any investor that has invested in that type of business because there was a Mzungu put in front next to a black co-founder, that business probably closed within 3 years. Because ideally they did not look at the fundamentals and what each fundamental means and how to then scale that. So that's what I would say.
You've answered the next question I was going to ask you, which is why do many SMEs in Africa particularly close within 5 years, and if it's still the same within the climate space? Romano, I'd like to come back to you again. You talked about the weaknesses in policy. So I want to give you a magic wand. You know, like now you're a magician, magic wand, you can make things happen. And you have 15 minutes with either Joseph or Nakami or maybe somebody in government who can make things happen. What is the one specific policy or mechanism that you would do away with, that you think is standing in your way as, you know, as an innovator in order for you to get to where you need to be? What is that policy you'd remove? You'd wave your wand like this and shoo, it's gone.
So, thanks for that. I don't know that there is a policy that is standing in the way, or rather for me, there is a policy missing. There is no urgency, as far as I'm concerned, in solving the critical issues that matter in terms of climate finance, in terms of transition. So, how many COPs have we done? And
this year, 30.
Yes. Well, why would we do 30 before we have anything moving? Is it that
President Ruto said this 30 should be the last one?
What about the second? Why should we get to a third and a fourth and a fifth? So you see, that indicates lack of something somewhere. What is that something? And then if you look at our own conditions within where we live and we work, what are the gaps there? What are our priorities? Especially if we talk about climate finance, and then the question is, we need the finance to come. Okay, fine, yes, we do, because in business, as you move, you will need different investors to come into the picture. But what are the priorities? So for me, I would say priorities that can unlock local opportunities would be the most critical thing we need to do. In terms of financing, especially if you look at local finance, blended finance instruments are quite critical for transition, especially where everybody else has not understood it, rightly so. Local finance entities, banks, they need to be capacitated either through policy or knowledge instruments for them to make the necessary decision. Now, all that is not there. If we can create that, especially using a knowledge instrument, I think that would be the most critical thing.
Okay.
And then if you look at our own conditions within where we live and we work, what are the gaps there? What are our priorities? So for me, I would say priorities that can unlock local opportunities would be the most critical thing we need to do. In terms of financing, especially if you look at local finance instruments are quite critical for transition, especially where everybody else has not understood it, rightly so. Local finance a policy instrument, a finance instrument, those kind of things, supported by a strong policy, we will be very far. I'll give you an example. Take two countries in terms of electromobility, Rwanda as a good example, and Ethiopia, and then say, okay, Kenya started before these countries and said by the year 2025 we'll have done 5%. We have not reached that 5%, but these countries have gone beyond that. Why? Policy. Nothing else but policy. So if we get the right policy,
and goodwill,
you will see a lot of growth. You will see a lot of capacity, skills development, all these things, because people are extremely creative. But you just get into a scenario where there is nothing.
There's a school of thought that says that for a country like Kenya, does not need any more policy because it already has more than enough policies. That the greatest challenge is to translate that policy into action, and therefore that means maybe you need better people in office who actually make that happen.
There you go.
You need goodwill.
Okay, so let me just answer to that question. Do we have a policy that is supporting climate finance, for example? If there is, let's use it. I don't know if there is. Do we have a policy that promotes electromobility? That's the sector where I am. If there is, let's use it. Take the example of renewable energy. We've used fiscal incentives to promote adoption of renewable energy. We are not using the same thing in the same equal measure to promote adoption of electromobility, particularly in the sectors that are immediately investable. So those kind of things could work immediately.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I want to get us to a section we call the quick fire. In this section, fast, unfiltered, thought-provoking, say the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't think about it too much. Don't overthink it. Okay? Don't overthink it. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay? We ready? Take a deep breath. Okay, so the first round of quick fire, you complete the sentence. Complete this sentence. The biggest lie told about climate finance in Africa is? You're thinking about it. Use your microphone.
Yeah. No, the biggest lie is that it is sufficient.
Okay. So saying it's sufficient is a lie.
Yeah.
Nakami, for you?
That it's not de-risked. By the way, that was not the thing in my head. Can I just say what was in my head?
Yes, what was in your head?
When you guys were talking, I was just thinking there's a Green Climate Fund.
Yes.
What was that based on? And why is it not trickling down as it should? That was what was in my head.
Okay. Romano?
Available.
Okay, that's similar to what he said. Okay, so the second round, one word only. Okay, one word only. When I think about Africa's climate future in 2035, the word that comes to my mind is?
Green.
Okay, you think about Africa as green. Okay, Nakami?
Money.
Your money. Okay, Romano?
Industrialized.
Industrialized. Oh, wow, that's interesting. 2035, you think we have time to make it happen?
Yes, even before that.
Even before?
Yeah.
Okay, here, the next round, honesty. Honesty is the answer, okay? If you could eliminate one bureaucratic requirement or process that's slowing down climate investment in Kenya right now, what will it be, Romano?
Policy.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay, no specific policy.
Fiscal.
Fiscal policy?
Yes.
Okay. Nakami?
I would say unstandardized diligence processes.
What does that mean?
So we take a really, really long time to run due diligence for the investments that we make. And that's probably because, again, we've mentioned this, we don't have the in-market expertise. We don't know the different nuances that are across different markets. So that, if I could fix that, that would fast-track the investments in this climate tech space. And I think one way we're doing that as Village Capital, because we are a global organization, is we actually partner with other entrepreneur support organizations such as the KCICs, the SINAPs, all the people in this ecosystem, to then be our sourcing and diligence partners, because they are in market, they directly work with the entrepreneurs on the ground, they understand the challenges that these entrepreneurs are facing, and they've already taken them through like some sort of de-risking mechanism. So if we could shorten and standardize that due diligence process for investors, I think that would really get us far ahead.
Okay, Joseph?
Policy execution?
Policy execution.
Yeah, basically what I mean by that is literally every green sector in this country has some form of enabling policy. In 2016, we did a green business strategy. Last year, we did a circular economy strategy. So we have, but implementation is the problem. So execution is the challenge we have.
Okay. Next round, the uncomfortable truth.
You did ask me what I meant?
Because you've spent quite a bit of time talking about policy.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, the biggest hurdle for me is that I would like to work and then make money, then pay tax, as opposed to pay tax, then work.
So you need right people in the office to
so
do
that's what's happening in my space.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So the uncomfortable truth.
Yes.
That's the next round.
Yes.
What's the hard truth about your sector that nobody wants to say out loud? Joseph? You're thinking?
Yeah, it needs proper organization so that all the incubators and accelerators can work together to deliver results.
Okay, Nakami?
I feel like if the investors watching me right now, they're probably going to throw stones, but we actually don't make that many investments in a year.
Oh, why not?
If you speak to like VCs or even impact investors, it's probably 2-3 deals a year.
Why?
One of the things I just mentioned. Diligence can take up to 6 months before we even make the decision to make the investment in you. And because, again, what Joseph mentioned, we are all working in silos, that is taking longer than anticipated. So sorry to whoever else is watching that's investing, but that is the truth.
Okay, Romano, your uncomfortable truth?
Too much talk. Just too much. Let me tell you something else. Fundraising in the space where I am takes, I think there are 1 or 2 rounds a year. And then when they happen, you hear that, 600 people applied, only 20 were taken. What happened to the 580? It's just too painful to say that, right? And then we are on LinkedIn. Just
clapping for ourselves.
We have done this. Look at how much we have said. It's quite uncomfortable.
Okay, right.
That is true. I mean, historically, if you look at KCAC, for instance, over the last 12 years, we've only supported 7% of the applications we've received. Yeah,
so due diligence.
The issue is limited resources.
Limited resources.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next round, the Baltic. Here, you tell me your most controversial opinion about climate finance. Okay? The thing that you believe your peers would most likely disagree with or stone you. Okay? Your most controversial opinion. Joseph, we start with you.
Yeah.
Use your microphone.
Yeah, I would probably say that we don't have sufficient funding going towards adaptation, which is where it's most needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nakami?
I think I already said my controversial one that would get me stoned.
Okay, Romano?
It's misused. Yeah, I've seen a lot of climate finance people in the space saying all beautiful things. Or even entities that do not get climate finance, but they do nothing about it. Yes.
So you get the money and then you do what with it?
Thanks for the question. I don't know what
I want to say something really controversial. I don't think people understand what climate finance means, even the investors themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to follow with anything. I just leave it at that.
Just leave it hanging in the air there. Okay. The next round is if you were in charge. Okay? If you were in charge. So imagine you're a dictator. You have 24 hours to be a dictator. What's the one thing you would change about how climate finance works, especially in Kenya? Joseph?
Yeah, I would create a publicly funded agency to receive money and fund all enterprise support organizations with proper KPIs.
Yeah. Oh, you are ready for that question.
Yeah.
You are ready for that question, Nakami?
If I was a dictator,
Yes.
I would genuinely get the most underserved, overlooked entrepreneurs whose businesses are scalable and put money in them. I don't care where the money is coming from, but because I'm a dictator, I have access. I can tell this guy, give this guy $1 million, give that $1 million, and it gets done. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay, Romano?
I will take all the climate finance and give it to commercial banks as a de-risking instrument and tell them to lend money to the entrepreneurs.
You'd prefer to get the climate funding as debt as opposed to...
No, I'll give it to them as a de-risking instrument and tell them now to use their own money to lend because they are the lenders anyway. And they talk about risk. I will remove all that risk and see if they can lend or not.
But you would be giving them guarantee, but they would still lend at 18%, or 23%.
Oh, I would now follow back and tell them at what rate to lend it.
Because you're a dictator, right?
Yes, I'm a dictator.
Okay, so the next round, reality check. Here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready is Kenya today to absorb, if, for example, somebody were to say, I have $1 billion and I want to put it in climate investment in Kenya. How ready is Kenya to absorb that funding, Joseph?
7.
7, okay, not
I
bad.
would say like a 6.5.
Okay,
First of all, where will the money go?
wherever,
Wherever.
within the climate space, anywhere within the climate space.
Okay.
How ready is Kenya for it?
I would say a 9.
Oh.
If it receives the money.
If it received?
Yes.
9, that's
Yes.
very optimistic. Why 9?
Everything is there. It's the funding that is missing. And if the fund were to be there, a lot could really happen. Look at the entrepreneurs and what they do. They're lacking the funds. Yes.
Okay.
You can tell he's an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So before we get into the last round of quickfire, I'd just like to tell the audience that you're coming into the Q&A section right after this last round. So if you have a question, please raise your hand so that a microphone can come to you. And then when we're done with the quickfire, we just get right into the Q&A. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and a microphone will come to you. Great. So last round, this is hope. We are done being pessimistic and dictators. Now we are looking forward and being hopeful. So here, you get to complete the sentence. Okay? I stay in this work because, Joseph?
Because of the impact it makes.
Impact. Yes. What is the impact you've made?
I create jobs, I increase revenues, I support policy instruments so that then the future can be green, so to speak. I support livelihoods. I ensure that families can be able to take their kids to school, and basically that sort of thing. So it's the impact that keeps us motivated every day.
Great, Nakami.
I think I stay because every single day it challenges me. Anyone who knows me, including Joseph, who was my former employer, knows that I get bored very quickly. So I'm always looking for the next challenge. And this line of work is extremely challenging. Every day you encounter something new, a new innovation, a different way to do things, a different way to deploy capital. and that's enough to keep me going.
And you love it.
And I love it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Romano?
Because I love it, and we bring technology to the people. Every day we are doing something new, it's not been done before. People are, what are you doing? Yes, we are doing this. That's why I love it.
Great. I wonder what was your favorite part of this quick fire? Mm-hmm. What was your favorite part?
The last question.
The hope question.
Yes, the hope
you
question.
Liked the hope question.
Yes,
Like, what was your favorite part?
I think I liked the controversy. Yeah. A bit of drama is good.
Mm-hmm. Drama is good for the life. Mm-hmm. Romano?
They're random questions.
That's good. Now, the audience, if you're ready for your questions, we'll be happy to take some of your questions. Oh, wow. Yes. You were paying attention. Okay, you could start to the closest to you. There's a lady there closest to you. State your name and who you're directing your question to.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Betty from Clean Advocate Africa. I want to ask my question to Mr. Julians. My question is, how can my organization get funding so we can do a climate project effectively? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Looking for funding. We'll take at least 3 questions and then. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. My name is Johnston Imbote, and you can as well as call me Kijana Sakaja. I'm a climate change advocate. I'm the founder chairperson of the Green Advocates Africa. We are based in Kasarani. The Green Advocates, we are focused on SDG number 13, which is climate action. So I have a question to Nakami. How do you support the local organizations like the Green Advocates in the grassroots level? And also answering Romano, our panelist, you asked the question if Kenya has policies regarding the clean energy. Yes, they are there, well outlined in our national determining contribution, the NDCs, and the NAPs, national adaptation plans, well outlined. But the problem is implementation part. Because if you come to the grassroots level, like the Green Advocates, we are a local organization, and plus the many local organizations, they lack awareness, they lack infrastructure, and they lack incentive to carry on climate activities or climate action. So my call is to the government, plus the investors, and also the international decision-making bodies regarding climate or regarding environment, by going with the nation, like the UN Habitat, the UNGA, United Nations Assembly, I'm forgetting this organization.
It's okay, but
yeah, just to mention but a few. So those international decision-making bodies, they must support the grassroots organizations like the Green Advocates, plus any other local organization, to give them incentive. And this incentive is like funding. We are here for funding. Okay. Zainab, I've been in very, very many forums, boardrooms discussions, they want to help, of which we are really doing. Let us go to the implementation part. Let us get the funding, we do the climate projects.
Have you tried to apply for funding?
Of course, I have a very nice proposal. I've supplied it everywhere, but
nothing to get. They haven't given you any feedback?
My call, they have not given any feedback. I'm still waiting. So my call to action is the international decision-making bodies, the UN, the UN Habitat, the UNGA, to support the grassroots organization to do the climate action.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad Nakami is here. Maybe you two can have a conversation afterwards, and maybe she'll be able to guide on what could have gone wrong in your application.
Absolutely.
That you've not been able to get responses. Thank you, Mbote.
As I finish, let me acknowledge Romano, because they is doing the SDG number 7, which is clean energy, which is your area. Thank you so much, because the SDG number 7 supports SDG number 13, which you are doing, so we can collaborate well. After this, I'll look for you.
Thank you. We'll take 2 questions from this side.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Nora Kijogi, and I'm passionate about the climate future, especially in Africa. So I love that our panel is comprised of the investor side and the entrepreneur side. So my question is to Nakami mostly. I wanted to understand, especially because she said that there are funds that are available, but then our entrepreneurs are not aware that there are funds. So the people in the sector are like, there is no money. There is no money that is going to the climate side or climate finance. So my question is, what strategies are put across to enable people understand that there is money that will support them, or rather, which organizations do you work with, or is it the public, is it the government that helps you, or rather train people what is needed, because there are so many donor restrictions that people encounter, especially during applications for grants. Okay. So I'm trying to understand how do you make people learn about these things? Thank you.
Okay, we can let's take a question at the front here. Okay, yeah, and then we'll do another round, don't worry.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anthony Kirori from Green Pencils.
Go ahead.
Okay, I've been told to say it. My name is Anthony Kirori from Green Pencils. Basically, we convert paper back to wood to make pencils that grow into trees and vegetables and such. My question will be, I'll link it with what she just asked, and I was going to ask KCIC together with Village Capital. There's a lot of money out there, let's say from the big multinationals that pollute a lot, oil industries, airline and all that. Is it possible for your two organizations, maybe European government, to identify innovations that are brilliant when it comes to carbon credits and such, and then link us up with those heavy polluters, the oil industries, the airlines, that are looking for mitigation projects? Then that way, you'll have solved a big question, because we don't know how to get to them. They don't know how to get to us. You are in between, and like she was asking, it would help solve a problem. Thank you.
Great. So we'll take another round. Let's answer these ones first, and then we'll come back to a second round. Joseph, you'd like to go first?
Yeah, I think let me just start with the last question from Anthony while it is still hot. This is the question of carbon markets. Carbon markets, I mean, like every market, they have the buyer side and they have the seller side. So we're looking for how you can be linked up with companies that are heavy polluters, so to speak. Strictly speaking, those are the buyers. I think let me just take a minute to explain how carbon markets work. Carbon markets work on the basis of what is called cap and trade. What happens is that specific industries and specific companies are given targets. That's polluting targets. Now, because they cannot order their systems very, very fast, so what they do is buy to be able to make up for what the excess that they pollute. I don't know if I'm making sense to you. So assume I'm told, fine, you know you have a cap, you can only pollute up to 100 tons, isn't it? But I know that I'm polluting 200, isn't it? So for me to be able to come to 100, I have to buy the other 100. And usually I buy that from a global south company. I come here and support a project that can be able to reduce emissions by 100. I pay for that 100, and then I'm now compliant, isn't it? So that's how it works. And therefore, linking you up with this is basically what you're asking is, can we then link you up with carbon credit buyers as it is? I know the process is very lengthy, yeah, but that can be done. And we are working with a company called, there's a company we're working with at KCIC to basically be able to link our clients with carbon markets. So I think let's have a conversation after this with any of the KCIC people in here, and then that can happen. Thank you.
Okay, Nakami?
I'm going to respond to the question from, sorry, I forget the gentleman's name and her. which was how can we support grassroots organizations. So let me go back to who Village Capital is, because today I was wearing the hat of an investor, but Village Capital is actually known as an ecosystem builder, meaning we work in the intersection of supporting entrepreneurs and entrepreneur support organizations such as KCIC, and then we are also a fund manager and a capital deploying company, which is the impact investing side of Village Capital. So in terms of supporting community-led organizations as well as entrepreneurs, we actually run programs for entrepreneur support organizations and community-led organizations. Same way we build the capacity of entrepreneurs, we also build your capacity from social capital as well as access to financial capital. So we do have programs running for organizations such as yourselves, and wherever we have something, we will put up a call for applications. And there's a certain criteria we use, which is really based off of our core as Village Capital, which is to work with the underserved markets. So we'll let you know. I can take your contact information, and when the next call is out, then yeah, you can apply. And your question was? I forgot.
Betty, she talked about she talked about awareness, how to get people to know where to go.
So I think one way we do that really well as VilCap is, it goes back to what I just said, which is working with locally led organizations to then spread the word. So we do believe that this silo working that we have in this ecosystem should stop completely, which is why our approach in capacity building is to co-deliver programs. So we don't do it on our own, we work with locally led organizations to do that, which is then how the information will disseminate to you. And even in our capital deployment, we also use locally led organizations and entrepreneur support organizations as our pipeline sourcing and diligence partners, so that information will still trickle down to you. And we've built really great resources for both entrepreneur support organizations, community-led organizations, as well as the entrepreneurs they serve, to be able to help these businesses scale. So that's one thing I say, one approach we use at VilCap that works really well.
Okay. Francis, any of the questions you'd like to comment on?
So, linking, and I think he, from KCSE, that question has been responded to, but the connection to climate finance, where it is being sourced for, is really not within our reach. There are structures of how the funds are collected, how the funds are aggregated, disaggregated, and then they reach entrepreneurs from where we sit. That whole process is really why we are here. It is really the conversation. It's not that the funds are not there. They've been collected. They are sitting somewhere. And the question is, how soon can they get to us? Some of the structures and the mechanisms between the person who's given the fund and the person who's going to receive, including all those applications that they are talking about and how to get them, how many of them are coming when, that's the problem. And the policy that is there to support that. For example, if it is true that the funds exist and that we as a country, we realize that we need those funds for our people to drive a specific agenda, there should be educational solutions, awareness campaigns, and all manner of other accelerative mechanisms to make sure that the funds get where they should go. Those are the things that are missing. Whether they are policies, whether they are awareness, whether it is investors increasing the number of applications they do, all these things. Now we have a few very good players in the space. We've been on the Kenya Climate Innovation Center and we've had tremendous support. We've been able to train 120 people from the support they've given us and support we've gotten from other players like GIZ, for example, Siemens Stiftung. Why? Because they do realize these needs that we are talking about. But those are too few to drive the number of people. If you look at the narrative out there, it says 800 people do not have energy. 800 million people.
Yes.
Right? So how do you drive change for 800 million people? That's a whole continent somewhere. You cannot do it with these 30 cops. You see, that's really the issue. It's not that we do not know what to do, that the funds are not there. It's more a question of, are we doing what we are supposed to do, or are we doing enough to have the right change that we are looking for? Otherwise, you would not be asking whether the funds are there. They are there. Let's put it that. Let's be clear that the funds exist, isn't it? We need more KCICs. We need more village capitals and town capitals and many other, and then we need quite a lot of things, isn't it? Because the job is big.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We can take another round of questions. There's a lady here who already has a microphone.
Hi. My name is Felicitas Okoko, and I'm from Generation Us Kenya. So I'm a gender and climate justice advocate. And my first question will go to Nakami. As you as an investor, you said that you guys consider like de-risking mechanisms and return on investment mostly when choosing projects that you want to invest on. And I will come in from a social impact perspective. When you're looking at these projects, do you consider the social impact that these projects have in the communities that they're being executed in? Let's say projects like renewable energy projects and projects like carbon markets, carbon credit projects. Do you consider the social impacts of, like, on people in communities where these projects are being implemented? And in relation to carbon credits, like, could there be investment standards that actually look into de-risking social and environmental impact? And then my second question will be to Julius. And when we started this conversation, you said that finance is there, which I do agree, but the second bit, you went into us creating finance, climate finance for ourselves. And I just wanted to ask, why do we have to pay to mitigate a crisis that we are contributing less than 4% to? Why are we not holding polluters accountable? Why are we not talking about having effective climate financing systems? Because we do have other priorities that is not climate mitigation. We do have a lot of issues as Kenya and as Africa that is not climate mitigation. Why do we have to fund transition? And I'm talking from a just transition perspective. I do advocacy in just transitions. And why do we have to fund our own transitions? We are still not accessing maternal health. We're still not accessing even basic health need. As I stand here, I don't have medical insurance. And it is not because I can't afford to have medical insurance. It's because I have different priorities. To someone, that would be a priority. To someone else, mitigation is a priority. But to us, we have different priorities. We have poverty, we have hunger, we have so many things that we're dealing with. At the moment, education is becoming a crisis in Kenya. So why do we have to fund climate mitigation when we are contributing less, one, and we have other pressing issues? Thank you.
I really love that question. We can take another question on this side. Oh, sorry, there's a gentleman here who has the microphone already.
Okay, so hello. My name is Irongo Peterson, and my question, I think, will go to the whole panel. There's a documentary I watched, and as she said, I'll iterate. It was more on the food production. I think most of us have watched it. And they were looking in terms of food production for the livestock. How climate change, how for us, we are not, as Africa, the question you asked, from a global map, we are not contributing a lot towards the global climate crisis. The global north are contributing a lot. However, we are going to these COPs, as he has said, but there is no impact that is seen. And there's one statement that really hit home. And as an investor here, they were doing a documentary in Dubai, whereby they're feeding their cows. And the question came in, Africa will be the future for producing this food. For them, they're saying, it as it. And they're saying, for us, we don't have the money. They have the money. You need the money. They have the money. They don't have the food. They don't have the arable land. Why should we wait the way we're saying, as a community, why should we wait for us to be, for them to invest in us, whereas taking all the benefits back to them? Because most of it, the social impact of it, the economic impact of it, leave alone the social impact. These innovations that they're being brought in and the co-creation within our ecosystem alone for food production, for example, it's not benefiting the local person.
Okay.
Yes. So what should be done and how much should be created as a local investor internally? Do we have the capacity to build it such that we don't wait for people from outside, just from within us, and we build the capacity that Africa has?
Okay, we'll take a last question at the back there. At the back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm coming that side. I'm sorry, I'm coming that side.
It seems like those with fiduciary responsibility are requiring significant de-risking, and collateral is one of those ways, but data transparency may also be an efficient way to provide certainty, which can also de-risk. So when I look at the energy transition systems or site selection process for the EV infrastructure, which may be unique in Kenya, what are some of the things that you have to explain? How do you shape that story? How do you communicate to these investors in a way that has been successful? Because it's not easy to access the money from a fiduciary responsibility. It's not easy to give the money. And it just seems like there's a very big challenge in terms of country risk. And so in terms of KPIs, what are those key performance indicators that are required in terms of data transparency to create that de-risking in a way without providing the collateral?
Okay. Now you can move the microphone on this side. 3 questions from this side, one from the back, one in the middle, and another in the front.
Good evening. My name is Lamek Nyenga, a student from Technical University of Kenya, pursuing a degree in tourism management. So my question goes to Mr. Joseph. So tourism affects climate, and climate also affects tourism. So through this climate finance, how can tourism sector benefit from climate finance?
Okay. A question in the middle before we come to the front.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
My name is Mangale Ngome. I'm from Green Generation Initiative. And my question is, as we all know, we are in a competitive funding landscape. My question is to our investors. What's your advice on how we can create, on how young people can build credibility to attract potential investors? Thank you.
Young people, nice. Yes, at the front here.
Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoying the conversation. Something Romano said that I think will haunt me for a while, that we have sun we can use for transport, but all we do is use it to create shadows. Yes. Nakami, this first question goes to you. You mentioned that climate tech in African context has to be redefined so that it doesn't mean the same thing as it does maybe in other global context. I understand the reasoning behind that, but what does this mean for competitive edge, especially when we are still looking for resources that is coming from the global context? Second question goes to especially Zainab. For how long can this moralist reasoning when it comes to climate finance hold? Because we've advanced it over and over again. Every time we talk about climate change, we say how we are low polluters, low emitters, and adversely affected. And we are making a moralist argument to capitalist countries, waving the victim card. For how long can this hold, and how sustainable is it? And my last question to both the investors on the panel and the entrepreneurs on the panel is, at the Climate Investment Summit that is happening in the next 24 hours, what must fundamentally change in the structure of the conversations between the investors and the climate entrepreneurs, what must fundamentally change in how the language is structured? Because you're talking about due diligence that takes months or years. You're talking about not being able to understand each other from different perspectives. What must change, and what are you looking forward to in that particular summit in that regard?
Great. Maybe I could start with the question thrown to me. You know, this was at COP28 in Dubai, I believe, when the Kenyan team and Africa was preparing to go to Dubai. One thing President Ruto kept saying over and over is that we are done begging. As Africa, we are done begging. We are not going anywhere with a ball and telling people, I want this. No, we are not doing that anymore. And so in the newsrooms, I can speak for nation media particularly, in newsrooms what we're doing now is to focus more on solutions as opposed to the problems. Because the truth is we do face the climate crisis. That's the truth. And in newsrooms, if it bleeds, it leads. So climate stories often only appear on headlines if there's been a disaster. Stories have often been told from a disaster point of view or from a conference point of view. The COP is happening, we tell the story. It's flooding, people have died, we tell the story. There's a drought, people have died. It's a bleeding story. It takes center stage. So we are increasingly changing that narrative and now starting to tell more stories about solutions. And that's one thing we've done even with Earthwise, to focus on the people who are creating change to the climate problem that we are facing and moving their communities out of that dependence or being stuck in that cycle of problems and building resilience one person at a time. Yes. Joseph, you can answer your question.
Yes. Felicitas, that's a very interesting question. Why do we have to pay to mitigate climate change, and yet we only contribute 4%? That question has been debated many times. I need to add. It is part of the reason the COP is structured the way it's structured, where we have the Global South negotiators. Unfortunately, the Global South negotiators include China, who is one of the biggest polluters in the world. But it's also an intergenerational equity question. So I'm not surprised when it came from you when you said you're a climate justice advocate. The reality is this. If you look at intergenerational equity issues, this is what sometimes people say, not to excuse anyone. The cause of climate change that we have now happened centuries ago during the Industrial Revolution. If we agree that far, then people like to say that the benefits of Industrial Revolution are worldwide. So we cannot sit here and say that we did not cause and yet we were the beneficiaries of climate change, of the Industrial Revolution, because that's where the climate change came from. It's only that technology transfer has not come to at a scale that that has ensured that we have equal transfer worldwide. But then the issue then is, if that is true, then at what point do we stop being playing the victim card, as Tobias called it, and basically try to find solutions ourselves? Because the reality is climate change takes a very long time. The people who are there at the time when this Industrial Revolution happened are no longer there. They are probably their great-grandchildren now. So having this conversation with them is usually a very difficult thing, because you are asking them to take responsibility for what their forefathers did. So it becomes a very difficult question, by the way. It is. In my class on climate finance at the University of Frankfurt, we debated this the whole day and we did not agree. Yes, because everybody, depending on where you come from, you have a view. And that view is not necessarily wrong as it is. And so we basically, everybody has now got to come up with what is it called? You start where you are, you use what you have, and you do what you can, isn't it? So that basically becomes what you do. Because the truth is, we were also beneficiaries. Right now, we try to say we're only contributing 4%, but the whatever it is we are doing now is not contributing to the climate change that is happening now. The climate change that's happening now is contributed to by things that happened
in the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly, many years ago. I think we need to be to have that clarity.
I'm going to ask you to move very quickly to your answers because we are running out of time.
Good. So I'm on my last question now.
Yes.
The one was how can tourism benefit from climate finance? In very many ways. Tourism is a business like any other. These days we have something we call green tourism, where because it involves travel, so we ensure that travel is green. We ensure that the buildings we have are climate smart buildings because you'll need hotels and that sort of thing. There's quite a lot of natural resources in the parks and places like those, so that can lend themselves to climate finance projects, including carbon credits. And then there are just things around water use and energy use in tourism installations that lend themselves to climate finance. So those are the benefits. Thank you.
Okay, Nakami, very quickly.
So there was a question around whether we look at social impact. Felicitas, if you remember correctly, when I responded to what we look at when we are evaluating startups for funding, I combined the financial aspect and the social aspect as well. And that for us really differs from entrepreneur to entrepreneur and from thematic area to thematic area. It's not the same for everyone. So for people who are working on solutions around carbon credits, what defines social impact for them wouldn't be the same as people who are working in the agri-tech space, as an example. And then the question from Tobias around your competitive edge when competing with funding from the global north and tied to the KCIC conference. Again, that is something that I should have said as my controversial point of view is I don't think we have any business competing at all because our solutions are contextualized to the problems that Africa faces. And Africa is not one country. The problems we have here in Kenya are very different from what Rwanda is facing right now. And I think it's about time. Funding from the global north is becoming scarce anyway. It's about time we start to solve our own problems, including the funding problem. I personally, as Regional Director for VILCAP, have made it my mission to try, if I fail, to mobilize and raise capital from local people in Africa. And if I succeed, I think that will be very big. So to answer your question, that is not, we shouldn't be competing in the first place. And I'm really looking forward to a panel discussion around mobilizing local capital, which will be moderated by yours truly at the summit. So see you there, guys.
Okay. Romano?
Yeah, so Tobias, I think for the upcoming summit, I would like to see local financiers linking up with offshore financiers, particularly on de-risking instruments and some kind of blended finance. Personally, for us, we think that we should not necessarily be looking for the money from the financiers, but we should walk to our local banks and ask them, here is a credible business with clear unit economics, fundable, what do you need? And then they would say, okay, we need to be de-risked, and then they should be linked to funders who can de-risk them, and then they can lend to us in the local currency that we need, as opposed to borrowing money in foreign currency. As an example.
Okay, so we have about a minute and a half to go, so I'm going to give you each a couple of seconds to make your final remarks. Yeah. So in 20 seconds, what do you want us to remember today?
28th to 30th October, I'm hoping to see all of you at the EDGE convention for the Africa Climate Investment Summit. I think if you remember nothing else, just remember that statement, that's where you need to be. Yeah, I saw Martin around. Martin, do you have the registration link somewhere? You can,
okay.
You can say it loud so people can register before they leave here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nakami?
Yeah, I think it was very clear from this panel involving an ecosystem builder, investor, and entrepreneur that this ecosystem is still working in silos, and I'm tired of saying it. Like, just pick up the phone. Let's work together. Let's stop saying, you're working in silos. Yeah, that would be my parting shot.
Okay. Romano?
For me, blend the finance. That's all.
Blend the finance.
Just blend it.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for making time to join this panel discussion, and for you, the very lively live studio audience. And for me, my takeaways, I have 3 takeaways. I wrote them down. One, we do not suffer from a lack of innovation. We have an abundance of innovation, and people like Romano and other innovators across the continent prove that every day. And 2, the problem is not a lack of money. It's there somewhere. We just need to know how to get it to us. And my last takeaway is that the problem is the infrastructure, lack of trust, and lack of coordination. Like you said, you're still in silos, you're not talking to each other. So those are my 3 key takeaways, that if maybe they're fixed, they will be able to solve the climate financing problem. That's where I'd like to leave it tonight. Thank you very much for joining us on this conversation. And like Joseph said, the Africa Climate Investment Summit begins on Tuesday at the EDGE convention, and more on this discussion about climate financing and how you can access these finances, some of the conversations that will happen at that summit. So if you can make it there, please do make it there. But as the team behind Earthwise, I bid you good night, because like I said at the beginning, this was a very special episode for us because it is the season finale of season 3 of Earthwise. So I hope we've had a fantastic run, 20-something episodes. And as you close it tonight, we hope to see you again next year when season 4 begins. On behalf of my panel and of course the live studio audience, my name is Zada Bondati, and good night.